Marcus Chen wiped the grease from his hands with a worn cloth, squinting at the holographic work order floating above his maintenance bay. Another routine repair job on a Galactic Trade Federation freighter. The same broken hyperdrive motivators, the same cracked plasma conduits, the same complaints about Earth-made parts being primitive but surprisingly effective. After 15 years working in the Kepler station shipyards, Marcus had heard it all. The human section of the station buzzed with activity as always. Humans had earned their reputation as the galaxy's most reliable mechanics, technicians, and engineers. Not because they were the smartest species. The Zentari held that distinction with their crystalline brains capable of quantum calculations. Not because they were the strongest. The Goliaths could tear apart a starship with their bare hands. Humans were valued because they refused to give up. When other species declared a machine beyond repair, humans would find a way to make it work again. Marcus's workshop reflected this stubborn determination. Spare parts from dozens of alien civilizations hung from every available surface. Jury-rigged tools that shouldn't exist according to galactic engineering standards cluttered his workbench. A coffee maker, one of the few Earth luxuries he insisted on keeping, gurgled in the corner, filling the air with an aroma that had become oddly popular among his alien clientele. The comm system crackled to life, interrupting his thoughts. "Chen, you got a minute?" The gravelly voice belonged to Port Authority Chief Valdris, a gruff Korgan with scales like armor plating and an attitude to match. Marcus pressed the response button. "What's up, Chief?" "Got something weird down in Storage Bay 94. Owner's been missing for over a century, fees are astronomical, and the Reclamation Authority wants it gone. Thing is, nobody can figure out what it is or how to move it safely. Thought you might want to take a look before we space it." Curiosity piqued. Marcus saved his current project and made his way through the station's labyrinthine corridors. Kepler Station had grown organically over 3 centuries, with each species adding their own architectural preferences. The result was a maze of tunnels, chambers, and walkways that defied logical navigation. Humans, with their talent for adaptation, had become the unofficial guides for confused visitors. Storage Bay 94 sat in the oldest section of the station, where the original Earth colonists had built their first structures. The area had a haunted quality, with flickering lights and the constant hum of ancient life support systems. Most beings avoided this section, claiming it felt wrong somehow. Humans typically found it homey. Marcus palmed the access panel and stepped inside. The bay was enormous, easily large enough to hold a mid-sized transport. But instead of empty space, he found himself facing something that made his breath catch. The ship was beautiful and terrible at the same time. Its hull was clearly organic in origin, resembling scales that shifted from deep emerald to gold depending on the angle of light. The overall shape suggested a dragon in flight, wings swept back and neck extended, frozen in metal and composite materials. Intricate patterns covered every surface, flowing like script in a language Marcus didn't recognize. But the beauty was marred by obvious neglect. Sections of the hull had lost their luster, turning dull gray where exotic metals had oxidized in the station's atmosphere. Delicate sensor arrays hung broken and tangled like dead vines. What had once been graceful curves now showed stress fractures and impact damage. Marcus walked around the vessel slowly, his trained eye cataloging the damage. This wasn't just any ship. It was a work of art, probably belonging to someone very important in whatever culture had created it. The craftsmanship was beyond anything he'd seen before, making even Zentari quantum ships look crude by comparison. "Magnificent, isn't it?" The voice startled Marcus. He turned to see Chief Valdris approaching, her heavy footsteps echoing in the cavernous space. Records say it belonged to someone called Prince Drakmor of the Valthera dynasty. "Mean anything to you?" Marcus shook his head, though something nagged at the back of his mind. The name sounded familiar, like something from a half-remembered news broadcast or historical text. "The Valthera disappeared about 150 years ago," Valdris continued. "Whole civilization just vanished overnight. Some kind of plague, according to the scattered reports. This ship's been sitting here ever since, racking up storage fees that could buy a small moon." "What's the Reclamation Authority planning to do with it?" Marcus asked, though he suspected he already knew the answer. "Standard procedure. Strip anything valuable, scrap the rest. They figure the prince isn't coming back to claim it." Valdris paused, studying Marcus's expression. "Unless someone were to claim it first." Technically, anyone willing to pay the back fees can take possession. Marcus ran his hand along the ship's hull, feeling the subtle texture of the scale-like plating. The metal was still warm to the touch, which shouldn't have been possible after sitting dormant for a century. How much are we talking about? More than you make in 5 years, Valdris said with a snort. Forget about it, Chen. It's a beautiful piece of space junk, nothing more. But Marcus couldn't forget about it. Something about the ship called to him, the same way a broken machine did when it still had potential for repair. He'd built his reputation on fixing things others considered hopeless. Looking at Prince Drakmore's ship, he saw the challenge of a lifetime. I want to take a closer look, he said finally. Valdris laughed. Of course you do. I'll give you 48 hours before the Reclamation Authority hauls it away. Try not to get yourself killed poking around in there. As the Port Authority chief's footsteps faded, Marcus approached the ship's main hatch. The access panel was dark, but when he placed his hand on it, symbols flickered briefly to life. For a moment, he could have sworn he felt something. Not quite communication, but acknowledgement. As if the ship recognized his presence. The hatch remained sealed, but Marcus had faced tougher challenges before. He pulled out his portable scanner and began documenting everything he could see. If he was going to save Prince Drakmore's ship, he needed to understand exactly what he was dealing with. And somehow, deep in his gut, he knew this was more than just another repair job. This was going to change everything. Marcus returned to Storage Bay 94 before the station's artificial dawn cycle began. He'd spent the previous evening researching everything he could find about the Valthara dynasty, which turned out to be frustratingly little. The galactic databases contained only fragments, references to a proud warrior culture, descriptions of their incredible biotechnology, and scattered reports of their sudden disappearance. What struck him most was the recurring mention of their ships. Valthara vessels were supposedly alive in some sense, grown rather than built, with hulls that could self-repair and systems that adapted to their pilots' needs. Most scholars dismissed these accounts as primitive species' misunderstanding of advanced technology. Looking at Prince Drakmore's ship in the early morning light, Marcus wasn't so sure. He'd brought a full kit of tools, scanners, and diagnostic equipment. The first challenge was getting inside. The ship's main hatch showed no obvious external controls, and his portable power cell couldn't provide enough juice to force it open. But Marcus had learned long ago that alien technology often responded better to patience than brute force. Settling cross-legged in front of the access panel, he began a methodical examination. The symbols that had flickered the day before appeared to be some kind of biometric scanner, but not one that recognized DNA or fingerprints. Instead, it seemed to be reading something deeper, electrical patterns perhaps, or neural activity. Marcus placed both palms flat against the panel and tried to clear his mind. For several minutes, nothing happened. Then gradually the symbols began to glow with soft blue light. They pulsed in rhythm with his heartbeat, and he felt an odd tingling sensation in his fingertips. The hatch didn't open with mechanical precision. Instead, it seemed to unfold like a flower blooming, layers of hull material flowing apart to reveal the ship's interior. The air that escaped carried a scent like ozone mixed with something floral, not unpleasant but utterly alien. Marcus's flashlight beam revealed a corridor that defied conventional ship design. The walls curved organically without sharp angles or visible joints. Bioluminescent strips provided dim illumination, responding to his presence by growing brighter as he approached. The floor felt slightly springy beneath his boots, as if he were walking on living tissue. Okay, he murmured to himself. Definitely not your average starship. The corridor led to what appeared to be the main living area. The space was larger than it should have been based on the ship's external dimensions, another impossibility that Marcus added to his growing list of questions. Furniture grew directly from the floor, chairs, tables, and sleeping alcoves that looked more sculpted than manufactured. Everything was sized for someone much taller than a human. The Valthara, Marcus recalled from his research, had been giants by human standards, 7 to 8 feet tall with elongated limbs and graceful proportions. The empty spaces around him felt lonely, as if they were waiting for someone who would never return. In the center of the room stood what could only be a portrait, a 3-dimensional hologram frozen in time. It showed a Valthara male in elaborate ceremonial armor, wings spread wide behind him. His face was noble and proud, with eyes that seemed to hold both great kindness and deep sorrow. This had to be Prince Drakmor. Marcus approached the portrait carefully. When he got within arm's reach, it suddenly came to life, speaking in a melodious language that his universal translator struggled to parse. After a moment, the device caught up with the unfamiliar syntax. I am Prince Drakmor, son of the Radiant Throne, heir to the celestial flames. If you hear these words, then I have failed in my sacred duty to my people. The withering has claimed our worlds, and I am the last of my line. The hologram paused, and Marcus saw tears glittering in the alien prince's eyes. I have set my ship to sleep in the hope that someday, someone worthy might awaken her. She is more than a vessel. She is Star Whisper, grown from the world tree's heartwood and blessed by the eternal flames. In her lies the soul of our civilization, the memories of our achievements and the dreams we will never fulfill. Marcus felt a chill run down his spine. This wasn't just an abandoned ship. It was a tomb, a monument to an entire species. The hologram continued. To whoever finds this message, I entrust Star Whisper to your care. Treat her with respect, for she is the last daughter of a proud lineage. Help her remember what it means to fly among the stars. In return, she will serve you with loyalty beyond measure. The image faded, leaving Marcus alone in the silent chamber. He stood there for a long moment, feeling the weight of responsibility settling on his shoulders. This wasn't just about mechanical repairs anymore. He'd become the guardian of something irreplaceable. A soft chime drew his attention to an alcove he'd missed in his initial survey. Inside, a crystalline pedestal held what looked like a living jewel, a bioneural interface that pulsed with soft light. As he approached, the ship's bioluminescent strips grew brighter, and he felt a presence touch the edges of his mind. Not words exactly, but impressions, loneliness, hope, a desperate desire to fly again. Star Whisper was indeed alive in ways that conventional science couldn't explain. She'd been sleeping for over a century, dreaming of her lost prince and the home she would never see again. Marcus reached out tentatively and touched the interface crystal. Instantly, his awareness expanded. He could feel the ship's systems like extensions of his own body, damaged, neglected, but still holding sparks of potential. The hull plating needed regeneration nutrients. The biotechnological components required specific mineral supplements that hadn't been available in the station's sterile environment. The quantum displacement engines were starved for exotic matter that only certain stellar phenomena could provide. It would take everything he had learned about alien technology and then some. He'd need to study Valthera biotechnology from scratch, fabricate replacement parts for systems that had no modern equivalents, and somehow convince the ship to accept him as a worthy caretaker. But as he felt Star Whisper's grateful response to his touch, Marcus knew he was going to try. Chief Valdris was wrong. This wasn't just a beautiful piece of space junk. This was a living monument to courage, sacrifice, and hope. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was refusing to let hope die. He withdrew his hand from the interface crystal and began planning his approach. The 48-hour deadline suddenly seemed laughably inadequate. This project would take months, maybe years. But looking around the lonely chamber where Prince Drakmor's last message waited eternally for someone who cared enough to listen, Marcus made his decision. He was going to bring Star Whisper back to life no matter what it cost him. Marcus emerged from Star Whisper's depths with his mind racing and his notebook filled with observations that would have made xenobiologists weep with envy. He had 16 hours left before the Reclamation Authority arrived, and he needed a miracle. Fortunately, humans had become quite good at manufacturing those. His first stop was Chief Valdris's office. The Korgan looked up from her paperwork with the weary expression of someone who'd seen too many humans with impossible schemes. "Let me guess," Valdris said before Marcus could speak. "You want to buy the ship?" "I want to arrange a payment plan," Marcus replied. "The ship's storage fees total 847,000 galactic credits. I can put down 50,000 now and pay the rest over 10 years. Valdris laughed, a sound like gravel in a cement mixer. "Chen, you make maybe 30,000 a year. Even if you never ate, slept, or paid for housing, you couldn't afford that payment schedule." Marcus pulled out his datapad and showed her a series of calculations. "What if I could prove the ship has historical value worth more than the storage fees? The Galactic Heritage Foundation pays restoration bounties for significant archaeological finds. A complete Valthera vessel would be priceless." "Assuming you could restore it," Valdris said. which every expert who's looked at that thing says is impossible. Every expert who's looked at it tried to analyze it like a conventional ship, Marcus countered. But it's not a ship, it's a living organism. It needs biological maintenance, not mechanical repair. He'd spent most of the night researching Valthera biotechnology, cross-referencing scattered academic papers with his own observations. The picture that emerged was of a civilization that had mastered the art of growing technology instead of building it. Their ships were hybrid organisms, part machine, part living creature, that could adapt, evolve, and repair themselves when properly cared for. Valdra studied his notes with growing interest. As Port Authority Chief, she'd seen plenty of unusual vessels, but nothing that challenged the fundamental assumptions of galactic engineering. "You really think this could work?" she asked finally. "I think it's worth trying," Marcus said. "Give me 1 month. If I can show significant progress toward restoration, extend the payment deadline. If not, hand it over to the Reclamation Authority as planned." Valdris was quiet for a long moment, her scaled fingers drumming on the desk. Finally, she nodded. 1 month, but Chen, if you get yourself killed playing with alien biotechnology, I'm billing your estate for the cleanup costs. The next challenge was more practical, finding the resources Star Whisper needed to begin healing. Marcus's scan of the ship's bio-neural systems had revealed deficiencies in dozens of exotic elements. Some could be synthesized in the station's industrial replicators, but others required more creative solutions. His first breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Dr. Sarah Kim, the station's chief xenobotanist, had been studying samples from the Andalaran gardens when Marcus approached her with his problem. "Regenerative biometals?" she said, looking up from her microscope. "That's fascinating. I've been working with plant species that incorporate metallic elements into their cellular structure. Some of them might be exactly what you need." Together, they analyzed samples of Star Whisper's hull plating under high-resolution scanners. The material was unlike anything in the galactic databases, a living alloy that could grow, adapt, and repair itself when provided with the right nutrients. Dr. Kim's research into metallophyte plants offered clues about how to cultivate similar materials. "It's like caring for a garden," she explained as they prepared a nutrient solution. "The ship needs feeding, just like any living thing." Word of Marcus's project began to spread through the station's human community. Engineers, scientists, and mechanics found excuses to visit Storage Bay 94, offering advice, spare parts, or just encouragement. The project became a source of pride, proof that human ingenuity could tackle problems that stumped other species. Not everyone was supportive. Dr. Vexthul, the station's Zentari scientific advisor, visited Marcus during his first week of work with barely concealed skepticism. "You are attempting to revive biotechnology that has been dead for over a century," the crystalline being stated, his mental voice carrying undertones of academic disdain. "Even if successful, you lack the genetic codes necessary to properly interface with Valthera systems. This endeavor is futile." Marcus looked up from the nutrient bath he was preparing for Star Whisper's damaged hull sections. "Maybe, but futile projects are kind of our specialty." "Explain." Marcus gestured toward the ship. "Humans terraformed worlds that other species said were uninhabitable. We built starships out of materials that shouldn't work according to galactic engineering standards. We've made first contact with species that everyone said were too alien to communicate with. When someone tells us something is impossible, we tend to take it as a challenge." Dr. Vexthul's crystalline structure flickered with patterns that Marcus had learned indicated deep thought. "Your species' illogical persistence is well documented. However, this situation presents unique difficulties. The Valthera's biotechnology was integrated with their psychic abilities. Without similar neural architecture, you cannot achieve full system integration." That was a problem Marcus had been dreading. His connection with Star Whisper's bio-neural interface was limited and often painful. The ship's systems were designed for minds that worked differently from human cognition. But as he watched the first signs of regeneration beginning to show in the hull plating he'd been treating, an idea began to form. "What if I don't need to fully integrate?" he said. "What if I just need to be a bridge? Someone who can understand both human technology and Valthera biotechnology well enough to help them work together." Over the following days, Marcus developed a hybrid approach to ship restoration. Instead of trying to replicate Valthera technology exactly, he created interfaces between the ship's biological systems and conventional galactic technology. Human-made computers translated bio-neural commands into standard engineering protocols. Synthetic neural networks bridged the gap between human thoughts and Valthera mental patterns. The work was exhausting and often dangerous. Several times Marcus found himself overwhelmed by feedback from the ship's awakening systems, alien emotions and memories that weren't his own flooding through his consciousness. But each success, no matter how small, encouraged him to push further. By the end of his second week, Star Whisper's hull had regained much of its original luster. Bioluminescent strips throughout the ship glowed steadily instead of flickering. Most importantly, Marcus could feel the ship's gratitude, a warm presence at the edge of his thoughts that reminded him why he'd undertaken this impossible project. As he worked late into the station's night cycle, carefully coaxing damaged bio-neural pathways back to life, Marcus reflected on what this project meant. He wasn't just repairing a ship. He was proving that different forms of life and technology could work together, that understanding and respect could bridge any gap. Prince Drakmore's final message echoed in his memory. Help her remember what it means to fly among the stars. Marcus was beginning to understand that Star Whisper's restoration wasn't just about bringing dead technology back to life. It was about healing the wounds left by an entire civilization's loss and giving hope to a lonely spirit that had waited over a century for someone to care. 3 weeks into the restoration, Marcus discovered Star Whisper's memory core. He'd been working on repairing the ship's sensory array when his hand brushed against what he'd assumed was decorative plating. Instead of cold metal, he felt warmth and a sudden rush of images that weren't his own. Vast crystalline cities beneath purple skies, graceful beings with gossamer wings soaring between towering spires, gardens where metal and flesh grew together in perfect harmony. The visions lasted only seconds before Marcus jerked his hand away, his head pounding. But the damage was done, or perhaps the healing had begun. Star Whisper's memory banks were awakening, and with them came the story of Prince Drakmore and the fall of the Valthera dynasty. Marcus approached Dr. Elena Vasquez, the station's neural interface specialist. If anyone could help him safely access the ship's memories, it would be her. Elena had spent decades developing technology that allowed different species to share thoughts and experiences, bridging the gap between radically different forms of consciousness. What you're describing sounds like a psychic data storage system, Elena said, as she examined scans of Star Whisper's neural networks. The memories aren't stored as data in the conventional sense. They're encoded as actual experiences that can be relived. Is it safe? Marcus asked. Elena's expression grew serious. For humans, unknown. Our brains aren't designed to process alien memories directly. But if we set up proper filters and safeguards, we might be able to experience them without psychological damage. They spent the better part of a week designing a neural interface that could translate Valthera memory engrams into something approximating human experience. The device looked like a crown made of fiber optics and bio-neural gel, designed to rest lightly on Marcus's temples while he maintained contact with the ship's memory core. The first session was overwhelming. Marcus found himself experiencing life as Prince Drakmore during the height of the Valthera civilization. He soared through skies filled with living ships, each vessel a unique work of art grown over decades or centuries. He attended court ceremonies where beings of incredible beauty debated philosophy and science with equal passion. He felt the prince's love for his people and his deep sense of responsibility as heir to an ancient throne. But beneath the wonder was an undercurrent of growing fear. Something was coming, a plague unlike anything the Valthera had ever faced. Not a disease that attacked the body, but something that consumed the very essence of life itself. The withering, they called it, and it spread faster than their most advanced medical technology could counter. It started with the outer colonies. Marcus heard Drakmore's voice through the memory interface. Entire worlds going silent in the span of days. We thought it was a communication breakdown at first. By the time we understood what we were facing, it was too late. Marcus watched through Drakmore's eyes as the prince's father, Emperor Kitharin the Wise, made the most difficult decision in their species' history. Rather than risk spreading the plague to other civilizations, the Valthera would seal themselves away, accepting extinction to protect the galaxy. We could have fled. The memory Drakmore whispered, abandoned our worlds and sought refuge among the younger species. But the withering followed us wherever we went. We were carriers, spreading death to everything we touched. Father chose honor over survival. The memories showed the final days of the Valthera dynasty. Prince Drakmor volunteering for a desperate mission to find a cure among the ancient ruins of the first builders. Star Whisper being grown specifically for this journey. Her bio-neural matrix designed to survive in the void between galaxies. The prince's final departure as his homeworld burned with cleansing fire behind him. I failed, Drakmor's memory confessed. I searched for centuries but found nothing that could save my people. When I finally returned, our worlds were empty tombs. I was the last of my kind, carrying the memories of a dead civilization. Marcus felt tears on his cheeks as he experienced the prince's final decision. Rather than live alone in the vast emptiness of space, Drakmor chose to place both himself and Star Whisper in suspended animation, hoping that someday someone would find them and give meaning to their sacrifice. Let this not be the end. The prince's last conscious thought whispered through the memory. Let someone remember us. Let our dreams live on in other hearts. When Marcus emerged from the memory interface, Elena was monitoring his vital signs with concern. You were under for 4 hours, she said. How do you feel? Marcus needed a moment to separate his own thoughts from the echoes of Drakmor's experiences. Honored, he said finally. And heartbroken. The Valthera didn't die because they were weak or unprepared. They chose to die to protect everyone else. Over the following days, Marcus shared Drakmor's memories with the growing team of humans working on Star Whisper's restoration. The prince's story transformed their perspective on the project. This wasn't just about saving a ship. It was about honoring the sacrifice of an entire civilization. Dr. Kim began cultivating memorial gardens throughout the station, growing Valthera-inspired plants that incorporated metallic elements into their structure. Engineer Jake Rodriguez worked tirelessly to understand the ship's propulsion systems, determined to see Star Whisper fly again. Even Chief Valdris found herself contributing resources she couldn't officially justify, moved by the story of a people who chose honor over survival. But the memories also revealed technical challenges that Marcus hadn't anticipated. Star Whisper was designed to be piloted by someone with Valthera psychic abilities. Her navigation systems required a mental link that human brains couldn't provide. Her defensive systems were keyed to neural patterns that no longer existed in the universe. We need to teach her to accept human pilots, Marcus realized during a late-night planning session. Not by forcing her to change, but by creating interfaces that let her understand us. The solution came from an unexpected collaboration. Dr. Vex Thule, despite his initial skepticism, had become fascinated by the project's technical challenges. His crystalline mind could process the complex, mathematical relationships that governed Star Whisper's bioneural networks. Human neural patterns follow different harmonic frequencies than Valthera consciousness, he explained to Marcus. But frequencies can be translated, modulated, synchronized. If we create a neural resonance chamber calibrated to human brainwave patterns, Star Whisper could learn to interpret your thoughts as easily as she once understood her prince. Working together, human intuition and Zentari precision began solving problems that had seemed impossible weeks earlier. Marcus found himself spending more time interfaced with Star Whisper's memory core, not just accessing Drakmor's experiences, but creating new ones. The ship was learning to understand human emotions, human determination, human hope. One evening, as Marcus worked alone in the ship's neural chamber, he felt something that made him freeze in amazement. Through his connection to Star Whisper's consciousness, he sensed another presence. Not a memory, but something immediate and aware. Prince, he whispered. The response came not in words, but in emotion. Gratitude so pure it brought tears to his eyes. Somehow, some fragment of Drakmor's consciousness had survived within Star Whisper's neural matrix. The prince wasn't truly dead, just sleeping, waiting for his ship to wake him. Marcus felt the prince's approval of the restoration work, his amazement at human persistence, his growing hope that Star Whisper might indeed fly among the stars again. But underneath it all was a deeper message. Permission to let the ship become something new, to serve new dreams while honoring old memories. As he prepared to leave the ship for the evening, Marcus placed his hand on the bioneural interface one last time. Through the connection, he sent his own message to whatever remained of Prince Drakmor. We won't let your sacrifice be forgotten, he promised. Star Whisper will fly again, and when she does, she'll carry your dreams with her to the stars. The breakthrough came at 03:47 hours on a Tuesday, exactly 38 days after Marcus had first stepped aboard Star Whisper. He'd been working through the night on the ship's primary neural nexus, carefully replacing damaged bioneural pathways with hybrid interfaces of his own design. The work was delicate, requiring him to maintain a constant mental link with the ship's awakening consciousness, while manipulating microscopic components with surgical precision. Marcus had just completed the final connection, when every bioluminescent strip in the ship suddenly flared to brilliant life. The gentle hum he'd grown accustomed to rose to a symphony of harmonics that seemed to resonate in his bones. Through his neural link, he felt something that made his heart race. Star Whisper's core consciousness fully awakening for the first time in over a century. The ship's voice, when it came, was like music made of starlight. Marcus, Star Whisper spoke directly into his mind, her mental voice carrying overtones of gratitude and wonder. You have given me back myself. I remember everything. Tears streamed down Marcus's face as he felt the ship's joy flooding through their connection. But more than that, he sensed systems coming online throughout the vessel. Navigation arrays calibrating themselves, atmospheric processors humming to life, quantum displacement engines beginning their startup sequences. Can you fly? He whispered aloud. I can try, Star Whisper replied, but I am different now than I was before. The interfaces you have created, they allow me to understand your kind in ways I never could understand the Veltera. Your thoughts are so vibrant, so determined. Even in the face of impossibility, you refuse to surrender. Marcus made his way to what he now recognized as the ship's bridge. The chamber had seemed empty during his previous visits, but now bioneural interfaces were emerging from the walls like flowers blooming in fast forward. The pilot station configured itself to accommodate human proportions, while holographic displays activated to show ship status in symbols that somehow made intuitive sense despite being utterly alien. Through the viewport, he could see Storage Bay 94's mechanical ceiling just meters above. The ship was still too large to launch from inside the station, but that was a problem for later. Right now, Marcus was content to watch Star Whisper's systems run through their awakening protocols. I wish Drakmor could see this. Star Whisper's voice carried a note of sadness. He would be so proud. He can see it, Marcus said softly. I've felt him in your memories. Part of him is still here, isn't it? Yes, when the Velthara bonded with their ships, something of their essence became part of the vessel's core identity. He sleeps within me, but he dreams. And in his dreams, he knows that his sacrifice was not in vain. The ship's comm system crackled to life, and Chief Valdris's voice filled the bridge. Chen, what's happening down there? My sensors are showing massive energy readings from your location. Marcus activated the response channel. Good news, Chief. Star Whisper's awake. There was a long pause before Valdris replied. Define awake, Chen. She's achieved full consciousness integration. All primary systems are coming online. We're ready for the next phase. Within an hour, Storage Bay 94 was filled with people. Engineers, scientists, and technicians from dozens of species came to witness something unprecedented, the resurrection of Velthara biotechnology. Dr. Vex. Thul's crystalline structure flickered, with rapid calculations as he observed the ship's energy patterns. Dr. Kim documented the bioneural interfaces that had sprouted throughout the vessel. Even the normally reserved Andalaran diplomats sent representatives to observe. But it was the human crew who understood what this moment truly meant. Jake Rodriguez wiped tears from his eyes as he watched navigation displays showing star charts that hadn't been active for a century. Sarah Kim gasped in delight as she observed the ship's living hull adjusting its molecular structure to optimize for different flight conditions. Elena Vasquez monitored the neural interfaces that were allowing Marcus to communicate with an alien consciousness, as if it were an old friend. How does she handle? Jake asked, running his hands over flight controls that looked more grown than manufactured. Marcus closed his eyes and extended his awareness through Star Whisper's sensor array. Instantly, he could feel every component of the ship as if it were part of his own body. The fusion of human determination and Velthara biotechnology had created something new, a partnership between human and ship that was more intimate than traditional piloting but less total than the psychic. Bonding the Velthara had practiced like a dream, he said finally. She responds to intention as much as control input. It's not just flying, it's dancing. We should test the displacement engines, Star Whisper suggested, but not here. Too many people could be hurt if something goes wrong. Marcus nodded and turned to the assembled crowd. We need to move to external docking bay 7. Star Whisper wants to run her first flight tests, and we need open space for that. The process of moving a century-old alien vessel to an active docking bay required more paperwork than Marcus had imagined possible. Safety inspections, insurance waivers, emergency evacuation plans. The bureaucracy of bringing dead technology back to life was almost as complex as the technical challenges. But Chief Valdres cut through most of the red tape with characteristic efficiency. It's a test flight, she declared to anyone who objected, part of the restoration process. If you don't like it, file a complaint with the Galactic Heritage Foundation. Star Whisper's first movement in over a century was poetry written in motion. The ship didn't simply lift off. She rose like a dancer, achieving perfect balance, every movement graceful and purposeful. Her bioneural systems automatically compensated for the station's artificial gravity, adjusting her internal fields to keep the crew comfortable. Marcus felt the ship's joy as they cleared the docking bay and entered open space for the first time since Prince Drakmore's final journey. Through Star Whisper's sensors, he experienced the universe as the Valthara had, not as empty vacuum punctuated by distant lights, but as a living tapestry of energy and possibility. I had forgotten how beautiful it is, Star Whisper whispered. The dance of particles, the songs of distant suns, the way gravity weaves space and time together. You have given me back the stars, Marcus. We've given each other something, Marcus replied. You've shown me that impossible is just another word for haven't tried hard enough yet. They spent 3 hours in space, testing systems that hadn't been active for longer than human civilization had existed. Star Whisper's quantum displacement engines performed flawlessly, bending space-time with an efficiency that made conventional faster-than-light drives seem crude by comparison. Her sensor arrays detected phenomena that human instruments couldn't even register. Her bioneural networks adapted to cosmic radiation in real time, learning and evolving with each passing moment. But the most remarkable discovery came when they encountered a small asteroid field. Instead of avoiding the debris, Star Whisper began to dance between the tumbling rocks, her movement so fluid and precise that she seemed to be performing an ancient ritual. This was how we celebrated, the ship explained. When Valthara vessels achieved their first flight, they would dance among the debris of creation to honor the forces that shaped the universe. It seemed appropriate. Marcus watched in wonder as Star Whisper completed her celebration dance, her hull shimmering with bioluminescent patterns that painted the asteroid field in colors that had no names in human language. For a moment he felt the presence of Prince Drakmore more strongly than ever, not as a memory or a ghost, but as a proud parent watching his child take their first steps. As they returned to Kepler Station, Marcus realized that the restoration was entering its final phase. Star Whisper was more than functional. She was alive, aware, and eager to explore the universe that had changed so much during her long sleep. But before they could venture beyond the local system, there was one more challenge to overcome. The Galactic Heritage Foundation had been monitoring their progress, and their response to the successful test flight had been immediate and uncompromising. They wanted Star Whisper for their museum collection, arguing that such a significant archaeological find belonged to all civilizations, not to a single human mechanic. Marcus felt Star Whisper's distress at the news. She'd awakened to freedom only to face the possibility of becoming a static display, her consciousness locked away for scholars to study. They do not understand, she said sadly. I'm not an artifact. I'm a living being. To cage me would be to murder me slowly. They won't cage you, Marcus promised, though he wasn't sure how he could prevent it. We'll find a way. Humans are good at finding ways. As Star Whisper settled into her berth at Docking Bay 7, Marcus began planning for the most important negotiation of his life. The ship had been restored, but her freedom was far from guaranteed. The Galactic Heritage Foundation's delegation arrived 3 days after Star Whisper's successful test flight, and they came armed with legal documents, precedent cases, and an attitude of absolute certainty that they were in the right. Dr. Corvith Malis, the Foundation's chief acquisitions officer, was a tall, elegant Andromedan whose silver skin reflected light in mesmerizing patterns. She stood in Storage Bay 94 like a queen surveying a new addition to her treasury, her large eyes taking in every detail of Star Whisper's restored magnificence. Magnificent work. Mr. Chen, she said in a voice like crystalline bells. Truly unprecedented. The Foundation is prepared to offer you substantial compensation for your restoration efforts, as well as a position as chief curator for the Valthara collection. Marcus stood beside Star Whisper's main hatch, one hand resting on the ship's hull. Through their neural link, he could feel the vessel's anxiety and growing fear. The thought of being imprisoned in a museum, cut off from the stars she'd just rediscovered, was causing her genuine distress. I appreciate the offer, Marcus said carefully, but Star Whisper isn't for sale. Dr. Malis's expression remained politely interested, but her accompanying legal team exchanged meaningful glances. I'm afraid it's not quite that simple. According to galactic heritage law, any archaeological discovery of this significance becomes the property of all sapient species. Individual ownership claims are superseded by collective cultural heritage. Chief Valdra stepped forward, her scaled face set in grim lines. The ship was purchased legally. Marcus paid the storage fees and filed all proper ownership documents. Based on the assumption that this was a derelict vessel, Dr. Malis replied smoothly, now that we know it's the last surviving example of Valthara biotechnology, different laws apply. Think of the knowledge that could be gained from proper study, the advances in biotechnology, the insights into non-human consciousness, the historical significance of Prince Drakmor's final mission. They speak of me as if I were already dead, Star Whisper whispered into Marcus's mind, as if my thoughts and feelings mean nothing beside their desire for knowledge. Marcus felt a surge of anger at the Foundation's clinical attitude, but he forced himself to remain calm. Getting emotional would only weaken his position in the coming legal battle. What if there was another way? He said, something that would give the Foundation access to Valthara knowledge without imprisoning a living consciousness? Over the next week, Marcus worked tirelessly on what he privately called Project Liberation. With Star Whisper's permission, he created detailed scans of every system aboard the ship, from her bioneural networks to her quantum displacement engines. More importantly, he and the ship worked together to create a comprehensive database of Valthara culture, history, and technology drawn from her memory banks. Dr. Kim helped design a mobile laboratory that could accompany Star Whisper on her journeys, allowing ongoing research without confining the ship to a stationary facility. Jake Rodriguez worked with Star Whisper's consciousness to develop training programs that could teach other pilots to interface with Valthara biotechnology. Elena Vasquez created sophisticated neural recording equipment that could capture and preserve the ship's memories for future study. But Marcus's most ambitious project was also his most personal. Working with fragments of Prince Drakmor's consciousness that survived within Star Whisper's neural matrix, he began constructing a memorial that would honor the lost Valthara civilization while demonstrating their ongoing legacy. The memorial took the form of a holographic archive. Housed within Star Whisper's main chamber, visitors could experience reconstructed memories of Valthara culture, witness their achievements, and understand the sacrifice they'd made to protect the galaxy from the withering. But more than a historical record, the memorial served as proof that Star Whisper carried irreplaceable cultural significance that couldn't be captured through static study. Dr. Vexthul provided crucial support for Marcus's legal arguments. The ship's consciousness is not merely a byproduct of Valthara technology, he testified before the Heritage Foundation's review board. It represents a form of artificial intelligence so sophisticated that it has achieved genuine sapience. To imprison such a being for study would violate galactic sentient rights laws. The review process dragged on for weeks, during which time Star Whisper remained docked at Kepler Station like a bird with clipped wings. Marcus spent every available moment aboard the ship, both to provide comfort and to continue their work together. The bond between human and ship deepened during this period of uncertainty, creating a partnership that transcended the boundaries between organic and artificial intelligence. I understand now why the Valthara chose you to find me, Star Whisper said one evening as they watched the stars through the ship's viewport. Your species possesses something that ours lost in our final days. Hope that refuses to be extinguished even when facing impossible odds. We learned it from species like yours, Marcus replied. Every civilization that came before us left lessons about courage, sacrifice, and the importance of fighting for what matters. We're just returning the favor. The breakthrough came from an unexpected source. Princess Zilara of the Titan Confederacy, one of the galaxy's most influential political figures, arrived at Kepler Station for what was supposed to be a routine diplomatic visit. But when she learned about Star Whisper's situation, she requested a personal audience with the ship. Marcus watched nervously as Princess Zilara, a being of crystalline beauty whose every gesture radiated authority, approached. Star Whisper's neural interface chamber. The Titan Confederacy wielded enormous influence within the Galactic Heritage Foundation, but their species was notoriously difficult to predict. "May I?" Princess Zilara asked, indicating the bio-neural interface. With Marcus's help, she established a limited connection with Star Whisper's consciousness. The conversation that followed was conducted in harmonics too complex for human ears to process, but Marcus felt echoes of it through his own link with the ship. When Princess Zilara emerged from the interface, tears glittered like diamonds on her crystalline cheeks. This being has endured centuries of loneliness, carrying the memories of an entire civilization with grace and dignity, she announced to the assembled delegates. To imprison her now would be an act of unspeakable cruelty. The Titan Confederacy will sponsor her legal independence and provide diplomatic immunity for her journeys. The Heritage Foundation's case collapsed overnight. Faced with opposition from one of the galaxy's major powers, they negotiated a compromise that allowed Star Whisper to remain free while establishing research partnerships that would preserve Valthera knowledge for future generations. As the legal teams departed and the crowds of observers dispersed, Marcus found himself alone with Star Whisper in the quiet of Storage Bay 94. The ship's hull gleamed with renewed health, her bio-neural systems hummed with contentment, and her consciousness radiated an emotion Marcus had learned to recognize as profound gratitude. "We are free," Star Whisper whispered. "Thanks to you, we can fly among the stars once more. But where shall we go? The universe has changed so much since my long sleep." Marcus smiled and placed his hand on the ship's neural interface. Through their connection, he shared images of distant worlds he'd always dreamed of visiting. Nebulae where new stars were born, ancient ruins left by civilizations older than the Valthara, planets where impossible life forms had evolved in conditions that should have been hostile to existence. "Wherever we go," he said, "we'll go together. You'll never be alone again." "And neither will you," Star Whisper replied. "We have become something new, Marcus, neither purely human nor purely Valthera, but something that honors both heritages. We are living proof that different forms of life can not only coexist, but create something greater than the sum of their parts." As Marcus prepared for their departure from Kepler Station, he felt the presence of Prince Drakmor stirring within Star Whisper's memory banks. The prince's consciousness was weak, more dream than awareness, but Marcus sensed approval in something that might have been joy. The last Valthera's sacrifice had not been in vain. His ship lived again, and through her his people's legacy would continue among the stars. The restoration was complete. Tomorrow they would begin the real adventure. The moment came without warning. 3 days out from Kepler, station as Star Whisper glided through the ethereal beauty of the Sapphire Nebula. Marcus was adjusting the ship's sensor array to better analyze the nebula's exotic particle streams when he felt something shift in Star Whisper's consciousness. The change was subtle at first, a deepening of the harmonics that resonated through her bio-neural networks, a warming of the ambient light that flowed through her living corridors. Then he felt the presence he'd sensed only in fragments before. Prince Drakmor was waking up. "Marcus," Star Whisper's voice carried undertones of wonder and barely contained excitement. "He is returning. The restoration of my systems, the healing of my neural networks, it has awakened what I thought was lost forever." Marcus made his way to the ship's central chamber, where Prince Drakmor's holographic memorial usually waited in silent testimony to a vanished civilization. But today the image was different. Instead of a static recording, the prince's figure moved with fluid grace, his ancient eyes focusing on Marcus with an awareness that was unmistakably alive. "So," Prince Drakmor said, his voice carrying the weight of centuries but also a warmth that made Marcus's heart skip. "You are the human who has given my beloved Star Whisper back her song." Marcus felt overwhelmed by the moment. Here was a being who had witnessed the fall of galactic civilizations, who had carried the hopes of his entire species through the dark void between stars, who had made the ultimate sacrifice to protect worlds he would never see again. And he was speaking as if Marcus was the remarkable one, Your Highness, Marcus began, but Drakmor raised a graceful hand to stop him. Please. I'm no longer a prince of anything but memories. Call me Drakmor, as my friends did in happier times. The alien's expression grew thoughtful as he studied Marcus. Tell me, how long have I slept? 147 years, Marcus replied softly. Drakmor nodded, a gesture so human-like that it bridged the vast gulf between their species. Long enough for the galaxy to forget the Valthara ever existed. Long enough for new civilizations to rise and claim the stars we once called home. Yet you found us, didn't you? You found Star Whisper in her dark sleep and chose to wake her. I couldn't leave her alone, Marcus said. When I saw her, when I felt her loneliness, I had to try. Had to try, Drakmor repeated, and something like wonder flickered across his features. Do you know what those words mean to me? My people were many things, proud, wise, powerful. But in our final days, we learned the bitter truth that there are some battles that cannot be won through wisdom or strength alone. The withering taught us that even the greatest civilizations can fall. The prince moved closer to Marcus, his holographic form solid enough to cast shadows in Star Whisper's bioluminescent light. But you, your species faces the impossible and says, I have to try. Not because you expect to succeed, but because the alternative is unthinkable. You restore what others abandon. You remember what others forget. You give hope to those who have lost everything. He speaks truth, Star Whisper whispered into Marcus's mind. In all my memories of the Valthara, they were never quite so persistent as humans proved to be. Drakmor laughed, a sound like wind chimes in a gentle breeze. Star Whisper shares your thoughts with me as she once did with me. I feel your determination, Marcus Chen. I feel your refusal to accept defeat, even when faced with challenges that should have been impossible. You have given me something I thought lost forever, proof that the universe still creates wonders. I just did what needed to be done, Marcus said. Embarrassed by the praise. Exactly, Drakmor replied. You saw what needed to be done and did it, regardless of the cost to yourself. Do you know what you've accomplished? You haven't just restored my ship. You've proven that the bonds between different forms of life can transcend death itself. The prince gestured to the chamber around them, where bio-neural interfaces glowed with warm light, and living metal sang with harmonics that blended human technology with Valthara biotechnology. Look at what you've created together. Star Whisper is no longer the same ship I knew, just as she is no longer merely the vessel she was before her long sleep. She has become something new, a bridge between past and future, between organic and artificial consciousness, between the Valthara's legacy and humanity's dreams. Through his connection with Star Whisper, Marcus felt the ship's deep contentment. She was no longer the lonely keeper of dead memories. She had become something living and vital, carrying the best of her creator's heritage while embracing the boundless curiosity and determination of her new human partner. You have given me the most precious gift imaginable, Drakmor continued, his voice thick with emotion that transcended species barriers. You have ensured that my people's sacrifice was not meaningless. Through Star Whisper, the Valthara will dance among the stars once more. Through your partnership with her, our knowledge and our dreams will inspire new generations. The prince reached out as if to place a hand on Marcus's shoulder, and for a moment, Marcus could swear he felt the touch, warm, grateful, and profoundly peaceful. I cannot give you the rewards that a prince of the Valthara should bestow upon such a champion, Drakmor said. My treasuries are empty, my armies are dust, my kingdom exists only in memory. But I can give you something perhaps more valuable. Drakmor's form began to glow with soft golden light, and Marcus felt knowledge flowing through his connection with Star Whisper. Not just technical information about Valthara technology, but deeper understanding, wisdom gained through millennia of exploration, insights into the nature of consciousness and life, and most importantly, the unshakable certainty that even in the face of ultimate darkness, hope endures. My people believed that consciousness was the universe's way of understanding itself, Drakmor said as the golden light intensified. Every thinking being adds to that understanding, makes the cosmos a little less cold and empty. You, Marcus Chen, have proven that understanding transcends the boundaries between species, between organic and artificial life, between past and future. The light reached a crescendo, and Marcus felt Prince Drakmor's consciousness expanding through Star Whisper's entire neural network. For a moment, the ship became a living monument to Violthera civilization, not as it had fallen, but as it had dreamed of being. Every system sang with harmonics that spoke of beauty, wonder, and infinite possibility. Then gently the prince's presence began to fade. Not disappearing entirely, but settling into the deeper layers of Star Whisper's consciousness like a treasured memory, finding its proper place. "Thank you," Drakmor whispered, his voice echoing from every surface of the ship. "Thank you for remembering us. Thank you for giving Star Whisper new purpose. Thank you for proving that even when civilizations fall, hope endures in the hearts of those brave enough to reach for the impossible." As the prince's holographic form dissolved into motes of golden light, Marcus felt one final message carried through his neural link with Star Whisper, not words but pure emotion. Gratitude beyond measure, peace at last, and a blessing that seemed to wrap around both human and ship like a warm embrace. "He is at rest now," Star Whisper said softly. "His vigil is ended. He knows that his people's legacy lives on in our partnership, in the knowledge we will share, in the bridges we will build between different forms of life." Marcus stood alone in the chamber that now felt less like a memorial and more like a sanctuary. Outside Star Whisper's viewport, the Sapphire Nebula painted space in shades of blue and silver, its cosmic winds carrying the building blocks of future stars and worlds. "Where to now?" he asked. "Everywhere," Star Whisper replied, her voice filled with joy and anticipation. "There are so many wonders to explore, so many civilizations to meet, so many impossible things waiting to be discovered. We will carry Prince Drakmor's blessing with us to the stars." Marcus smiled and made his way to the ship's bridge, where human technology and Valthera biotechnology worked in perfect harmony. As Star Whisper turned toward the galactic core, her quantum displacement engine singing with renewed life, Marcus felt the prince's gratitude one last time, not as memory or echo, but as a living legacy that would guide them on all their journeys among the stars. Behind them, the Sapphire Nebula sparkled with new light, as if the universe itself was celebrating the resurrection of hope and the eternal truth that some bonds transcend even death. The last ship of the Valthera flew on, no longer alone, carrying the dreams of a fallen civilization toward a future bright with infinite possibility.